All right, Nick, let's talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We're in the midst of camp. We're starting to see guys who are going to make an impact on this team. Are there any new faces out there for the Fighting Irish to push them over the edge to not only make it to the championship this year, but hopefully win the whole thing? And I think there's one guy in particular already impressing all the right people. You'd even say the most important person he is impressing. I think this is really great news for the Fighting Irish, and we'll break it all down here in just a minute. But first, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, one guy in particular really starting to impress for the Fighting Irish, impressing Marcus Freeman of all people with his work ethic and things that he is doing, and that's none other than transfer wide receiver Will Pauling. Let's get into the article and we can talk more about it on the other side. This is from over on 24/7 Sports. It says comments made by Marcus Freeman Thursday regarding the importance of Wisconsin transfer slot receiver Will Pauling are something to be excited about. Pauling caught 74 catches for the Badgers in 2023, and Notre Dame hasn't had a wideout catch that many passes in a season since Will Fuller in 2014. It's been over 10 years since that's happened. He says, obviously, Will had a previous relationship with wide receiver coach Mike Brown. Freeman said, Will's a dog. I love the way he practices. I love the way he approaches the game of football. He's a yes, sir, no, sir, great kid off the field, but he is a dog. I watched him in the spring. He practices at that level, and I'm like, okay, people need to get out and see the way Will Pauling practices. I'm excited to see what he does this season. He's going to help us in the whiteout room, but also on special teams, which is another very interesting anecdote as well. But just to give you a picture of what exactly Will Pauling could bring to this team, let's look at a comparison of Pauling versus Notre Dame wide receivers from 2024. We're going to compare Pauling's 2023 season because if you look at 2024, he had an okay season, but he missed a few games due to injury. So it's not an apples to apples comparison, missing 3 or 4 games from injury. So looking at Pauling's 2023 season to Jaden Greathouse, Bo Collins, and Jordan Faison, all from Notre Dame last season, you can see here on the left-hand side yards, there's a big difference. 837 yards for Will Pauling, 592 for Greathouse, 490 for Bo Collins, and 356 for Jordan Faison. Big gap, almost you would say you combine the first and or second and third place guy, and they get to what Will Pauling was able to do. Tremendous upgrade there as far as yardage for wide receivers. Then going on to what they talked about, a guy who can handle a lot of catches. Pauling 74 receptions that year, compared to Greathouse at 42, 41 for Collins, and 30 for Faison. So you can run the game through Will Pauling. He's able to do a lot of great stuff, getting good receptions. Looking at touchdowns, 6 touchdowns for Pauling, 4 touchdowns for Greathouse, 3 for Collins, and 1 for Faison. And then finally, here's something I think is interesting. Even though he wasn't at the top of the list here, one thing I thought was interesting is even when you run so many targets through Will Pauling, his production as far as yards per catch doesn't fall off. It is very competitive with everybody else, which is something you don't always see. So you see 11.3 yards per reception here for Pauling compared to 14.1 for Greathouse, 12 for Collins, and 11.9 for Faison. So he's right in the mix with a lot of those guys, even though he had almost double the catches for those guys. So he does not fall off. He still has a good yards per reception, even though he got so many catches in that 2023 season. So I think overall, what we're seeing here is a big upgrade at the wide receiver position. Notre Dame's kind of needed some help in the wide receiver room here for a little while. I think Will Pauling coming in as a slot receiver from Wisconsin, doing some good work, could be a big upgrade for this team. And already hearing the comments from Coach Freeman talking about what they like about him. He's a dog in practice, but he's also a good yes or no sir type of guy off the field in the locker room. You love to hear that. This is the kind of guy you want around your program. Curious what your thoughts are on Pauling here, Nick. But before we get to you, Notre Dame fans, in the comment section below, We're talking Notre Dame wide receivers here. And we could say just any wide receiver, but let's get a little bit more specific. We're relevant here. What's your favorite Notre Dame slot receiver of all time? Is there a guy that hung out in the slot primarily that you think was your favorite Notre Dame slot wide receiver of all time? Gonna make you do a little thinking, maybe even a little Googling, try to give us a good answer here, but we're anxious to hear from you in the comment section below. Nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on everything here for the Fighting Irish?
Well, you hit on something there towards the end that the wide receiver position is certainly something the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are looking to get more out of, right? Last year, as good as they were, it was not because of their wide receiver position, to be totally honest. It was in spite of, and that really hurt them. If you look back at the Ohio State game, and even in some of their postseason victories, they had to rely on special teams and defense, right? They didn't generate quite enough big plays. They were good enough on the offensive line, good enough in the running game, despite just an incredible rash of injuries. And I think quarterback play was good enough, but they just didn't have that playmaking receiver or enough of them, or even really didn't have to be elite, but just quality receivers to fill out and beat some of the best teams offensively alone, right? And that cost them against Ohio State, if we're being totally honest. They didn't make enough plays in special teams or on defense like they were able to against Georgia, for example, to win those playoff games. And the data supports that. So the last season, according to PFF, Pro Football Focus, if you look at the entire Fighting Irish team, they graded out top 10, number 10 in the entire country, courtesy of PFF. That's just using analytics. Receiving grade was 60th, right? So they go from being top 10 in the country, and as at the receiver position alone, they're essentially middle of the pack, and that's including group of 5 conferences and things like that. So among the blue bloods, they're in the lower echelon of having quality receivers. So certainly a position of need, certainly a position of need now, right? You can't win national titles, or it's going to be very hard to win national titles if you're competing with group of 5 guys for talent at the wide receiver position based on the data. Like, it doesn't work that way. You don't have to be great. You don't have to be stacked with 10 5-stars, but you have to be better than, average to below average compared to your peers at that position. And Pauling, if you look at the data, especially his 2023 season, like you said, when he was fully healthy, and you can kind of evaluate everything, is just that. He's above average. In fact, if you look at Pauling's receiving grade in 2023 and just extrapolate that forward for Notre Dame in 2025, Notre Dame's receiving grade as a team jumps from 60th in the country to about 30th, 32nd or so, right around that area. So again, they go from being average to below average to a little bit above average. And that could be just enough to push Notre Dame over the top. Now, there are questions, of course, how the quarterback position going to play, a new quarterback, right? So there are some variables there to work out, but it's very clear that the receiving position was a critical flaw last season. And if you look at their postseason games and you go through all their big wins and all their excitement, I mean, it was literally, it felt like an NFL postseason run where defense, special teams, taking care of the football, running the ball, and that's all well and good. But there is a certain point where you need to have, like, I love using NBA analogies for the playoffs. You need to have the guy that can get you a bucket late in the game when things get tough. And the football comparisons, you need to have a receiver that can win that big play, who can break a tackle, who can generate offense, convert that big third down at the end of the game when going gets tough. And Notre Dame, just totally honest, didn't quite have that enough against the big competition. Whether Pauling becomes that guy or not, it remains to be seen. But if you look at the data and just remove all biases, and I love the charts you showed up, I love looking at Pauling's PFF grades, there's a good chance that he can come in and fill that role for Notre Dame. Again, we're not asking him to be a superstar. We're not asking him to go out and win a Blitnikoff Award or go to New York at the end of the year as a Heisman Trophy finalist. We're just looking for above average receiver play here, especially with the quarterback change, especially with that new environment, maybe going a little bit younger at the quarterback position. It's going to put even more stress on this position group, the wide receivers, to execute at a higher level. Pauling is experienced. He's familiar with the coach in terms of the position coach. He's familiar with, the weather, that time of year, and all of that region of the country. So he's got enough of experience under his belt where I think he can come and contribute day one. And look, there's a lot on his shoulders. He needs to play at the 2023 level. To be totally honest, people aren't really talking about this with the Fighting Irish because they've done such a good job everywhere else on the roster. But wide receiver is a critical point of failure. If Pauling can play up to his 2023 level in 2025 for Notre Dame, no problem. They'll be great. But if they don't have him step up or somebody else, there could be very significant issues when it comes to playoff time for this Fighting Irish offense. A lot is on Pauling's shoulders. A lot is on the wide receiver room shoulders. Now, that's why it's good news that they're off to a good start and Freeman's impressed. So as much as that's a risk, it's also a positive that they're doing so well so early. But it is something to definitely keep an eye on as we get closer to the regular season.
Yeah, they can, I think, looking at the numbers for receiving grades for Notre Dame is very interesting because there was such a significant fall off from them ranking sixth in 2023 at the wide receiver position down to, like you said, 60th in 2024. Really something they kind of lost focus on. I think the wide receiver position kind of restacking those ranks. And this is the key here. Marcus Freeman, he knows what he's doing. On this channel, we talk about how great he is at recruiting and how good this program is. How do you get quick results at a position? You got to go and you can recruit guys, but that's not necessarily the fast answer. The fast answer is to go to the transfer portal and get a guy who has proven results. That's what they do with Will Pauling, a guy that can add immediate results to this team. And what do you do even further? Have him be familiar with the coaching staff. Mike Brown, former coach of Wisconsin, just a guy that worked with Pauling before. These guys are familiar with each other. Get some familiarity on the roster. We did some other stories a few weeks ago on other teams. What do? They go out and get guys that are familiar with the offensive coordinator scheme, plug them into key roles in the offense. That's going to get you good really quickly. Might not have the long term effects that you're looking for, but you got to jumpstart stuff. Notre Dame's already doing great at recruiting. We knew that. So this is a team, I think they know what they're doing. They might have been, a little bit lackadaisical as far as keeping up that wide receiver position last year, but I think they're on the right track to correcting that course, getting it back on track this year. I'm excited about Notre Dame this year. I think this team has only gotten better since last season, where you can't say the same about a lot of other teams. This is a Notre Dame team. I think if you go back and watch our videos, they are doing everything as far as using that success, being a national championship contender team to really elevate the recruiting. I think they're doing a great job. And this get of Will Pauling and what he's going to bring to the team is another example of just that.
And just one final point to end on. You talk about Pauling's disappointing 2024 campaign due to injuries. To give you just a snapshot of why Notre Dame's receiving room really struggled, Pauling in 2024 again missed some time. Disappointing year for him personally. Caught 42 passes. If you look at Notre Dame's leading receiver, we're talking about Greathouse last year, over 16 games, a deep playoff run. He combined for 42 passes. So Pauling at his worst equaled Notre Dame receiving at its most productive despite a lot more games, right? Now, that speaks to Notre Dame's receiving issues, but Pauling at his best, like you mentioned, hyper productive, catching 65 balls a couple years ago. That would be obviously, we're talking a 50% leap over Notre Dame's productivity for their number one receiver. So, again, Pauling being ready to contribute day one, knowing the offense, knowing the assistant coach, being familiar with the scheme, all of that is very important. I think Notre Dame's going to rely on him heavy. We're not talking about a guy that they want to develop, like you mentioned, went through the transfer portal. He is a day one answer. Big expectations for this wide receiver on this Irish offense.